Okay. Hello, everyone. See people trickling in. So I'll give it a couple more seconds for the signing in to slow. Um, thanks for joining our Earth Day webinar hosted with Sustainability Policy Council and a whole bunch of speakers. So I'm Allison Jenks. I'm the Facility Sustainability Manager, and we'll start with a couple generic housekeeping items for Zoom. You'll be able to submit questions in the Q&A function box, which is just at the middle portion of our screen. You'll be able to submit those there, and then we will be asking those questions live. After about 30 minutes, we'll be going through all of those. We also have the live transcript on. If you would like to turn it off, you can turn it off on the bottom of the screen. This will be recorded for you to reference later if you are interested. And we have, Michelle's got a little bit of this section will be recorded from her because she has some roofing going on. But we will be answering the questions live and she'll be live again. That was a weird way to phrase that, but welcome everyone. And I will turn it over to Chancellor Arvizu to give a proper introduction. You're on mute.
You hate to be that guy, but I will get that out of the way. You're on mute. I got it. Thank you for that. Thank you, Allison. Let me start over since you didn't hear me. Thank you, Allison, and welcome everyone to this Earth Day Symposium hosted by the Sustainability Policy Oversight Council. And Allison, thank you for all the work that you do. You are our local sustainability champion, so I really appreciate all the stuff that you do for us. The NMSU Sustainability Policy and Oversight Council was established in February of last year and will fully kick off this fall. We've obviously had some hiccups with the pandemic and all the things that go with that. So I'm really anxious to be able to see this Oversight Council really start to gain some traction. The council will seek to address the global challenges of sustainability and work to identify emerging and growing opportunities for collaboration among our academic as well as all of our administrative units, as well as our local community in the city and the state, and offering whatever the campus has to offer as a learning laboratory. One of my favorite themes of things that we do here at NMSU for students and faculty to work with the administration and increasing our operational sustainability. Now, let me just say a word about Earth Day, Earth Week. It is obviously a time for us to stop and reflect. This is actually the 50th anniversary. This started in 1970. I do recall that first time. It was not called Earth Day at the time or Earth Week, but one of my colleagues, Dennis Hayes, who is also one of the early directors at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, my former institution, was one of the co-founders of Earth Day. So it's always a big deal. Certainly at NREL, we always made a big to do about it. I'm glad that we're having the same kind of conversations here at New Mexico State University. This year's theme, by the way, for this Earth Day is Restore Our Earth. I think it's really a testament to get us all together to really pledge our support for all things that relate to environmental protection. And I think these events like this seminar today and the webinars that go with it, and the things that have been going on all week long, I think really inspires us toward entering into a conversation and hopefully beyond a conversation into action to do things that will ultimately support and protect the environment. Now, there are a number of different things that are themes that are going to be talked about during this entire week and hopefully during the entire year, but it's all the things that relate to how do we mitigate the effects of anthropogenic climate change and specifically natural processes, clearly emerging green technologies of all sorts. And probably the most important thing that we can be doing is innovative thinking. And so that's really what this is about. And really, we have, worldwide ecosystems that have been compromised in one way or another in many ways. And it's, it's really at addressing what can we do as a species, as global citizens, as countries and regional citizens as well, to really address the impacts of anthropogenic climate change, things that we have control over, that really relate to the stewardship of the environment and our planet. In addition to what we can do that's proactive and actively reducing the carbon emissions, there's also mitigation, there's also adaptation. And I think this year's Earth Day is really about, even though those other things are things we're likely to have to start doing, let's not in any way lose attention or focus on the fact that we actually can do a lot to mitigate the long-term impacts of anthropogenic climate change. So that's really, I think, what motivates us. We're excited about all the things that I think Earth Day, Earth Week all present to us. And so without further ado, one of the things that we'll hear right away is we're going to hear from Michelle Graves, the director of Global Design Challenge and the Launchpad at the Biomimicry Institute, who will be giving a presentation on biomimicry for innovation. And during her presentation, I think you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions. I know she's here live and she can respond as necessary. But there's a Q&A function, and maybe someone else, Allison or someone, will give you additional instructions about that. But as the presentation is going on, you can enter your questions, and the Q&A will be moderated by Julia Miller, a NMSU student and president of the Compost Club, another important function, I think, within our overall sustainability efforts. And you're also welcome to join a much more comprehensive discussion starting at 2:30 on the same Zoom link that we're on now, to hear a series of sustainability research presentations from NMSU faculty who are very active in all kinds of aspects of this effort toward essentially sustainability. So without further ado, let me just say welcome to Earth Day, welcome to Earth Week. I hope we are leaders in this field over time, and I have confidence that we can be. And overall, I think it's a great time to be at NMSU and to be working on these types of topics. I'm going to turn it back over to Allison, and she can take it from here. Thank you, Allison, and good Earth Week seminar for everybody.
Thank you very much. So now, just as a little reminder, we have the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, not the chat function that is currently turned off to everyone. Is that correct, Frank? So you can add your questions in there, and we will go to the presentation. And we'll go over the go over the questions and answers after with Julia and Michelle. We're here live.
Hi, everyone. It's great to speak to you today. Thanks so much for being here, and happy Earth Day. My name is Michelle Graves. I am a program director at the Biomimicry Institute, and I'd like to talk to you today about how biomimicry can be used as a tool for designing a healthier and more sustainable world. So first off, I'd like to start with a brief exercise. I want to ask you to close your eyes and imagine a place in nature that you love. Just try to focus on the smells and the sounds in addition to the sights. Are there trees, waves crashing on a beach, maybe sand between your toes? How about you hear some frogs or birds, or maybe the sound of a creek? Can you smell flowers or the desert just after a thunderstorm? Now hold on to that image and juxtapose it with an image of a place in our built environment, a high rise on a busy city street, an airport or a freeway or a factory or a power plant, maybe even a cattle feedlot if you've seen one, or acres of corn or cotton that's just been sprayed with pesticides. I want you to think about the stark differences between those two images, between the natural world and what we live in every day in our built environment. There's a big gap there. And we want to know, how can we close that gap? Well, we think that biomimicry can be a key pathway to doing this. The thing is that we have the technical abilities to achieve this right now. The question is, will we do it? And will we redesign systems to make sure that resources are distributed fairly? We believe we need everyone to adopt this mindset if we want a thriving planet. So those of us at the Biomimicry Institute are working tirelessly towards that goal. So let's jump in. Anyone know what this is a picture of? Just put it in the chat if you know what it is, or just guess, pop it in the chat. I'd love to see your responses. Anyone? It's a peacock feather. It's a very close-up image of a peacock feather. And the amazing thing is that these feathers are mostly pigmented brown, but the micro and nanoscale structure of the feathers reflects specific wavelengths of light back to our eyes, and it gives them these brilliant hues that we see. We call this phenomenon structural color, and it's found throughout the natural world. Here's another animal you might be familiar with, also presenting structural color, the brilliant blue morpho butterflies. So biomimicry is the practice of looking at that peacock or a butterfly and appreciating its beauty, but then also asking why and how does it get its color? How might we learn from that to make colors similarly in our built environment? Let's see how the team at Cypress Materials has unlocked this phenomenon of structural color and is applying it in paints and coatings. Here's a short video to help explain how this works.
These beautifully vivid blue wings belong to the blue morpho butterfly, but take a closer look and you'll see that they're actually translucent. There's no blue pigmentation involved. Instead, the wing has millions of stacked nanostructures which reflect blue light and allow other wavelengths of light to pass through. This phenomenon is called structural color, and this is where the physical geometry of a material determines its optical properties. And it's possible that this wing could hold the secret to keeping our cities cool. Scientists have been trying to learn from the light-bending abilities of butterfly wings for some time, but fabricating materials with these tiny nanostructures has traditionally been a delicate and expensive process, which is why Cypress Materials is developing a simple way to paint them onto surfaces. These optical coatings are made from synthetic polymers that are designed to self-assemble into ordered structures. It's a bit like spaghetti that straightens itself out, but on the nanoscale. These nanostructures can be designed to reflect specific wavelengths of light, just like the butterfly wing. Why is this a neat idea? Well, it provides an environmentally friendly way of producing color, replacing the need for toxic pigments or dyes, and can be used in anything from nail polish to cars. You could also paint a heat-reflective coating onto a building using nanostructures that reflect infrared light. In warmer climates, this would massively reduce the demand for air conditioning, providing a more sustainable method to keeping us cool. All with the help of our butterfly's wings.
So why does biomimicry matter? You might ask yourself, what is this term? Why should I even care about it? Well, here's just one example. Titanium dioxide. It accounts for almost 2/3 of the pigments that are produced globally. It's expected to reach a $22 billion market size in the next 5 years. And it's responsible for the crisp whiteness that we see in traffic lines, toothpaste, and powdered donuts also. It's also extracted with destructive mining practices, sometimes in places where human rights abuses are common. But what if there was another way to get that same white color? Well, researchers at the University of Cambridge's Bio-Inspired Photonics Lab have been studying this brilliant scarab beetle in an attempt to replicate its bright white coloration. Its color is created by the complex micro and nanoscaled structures of the scales on the beetle's exoskeleton. The network of chitin fibers inside these incredibly thin scales is an example of a highly optimized scattering structure. It reflects light of all wavelengths, causing it to appear white. And interestingly, the actual exoskeleton beneath those scales is black. So you can see that's a very effective optical scatterer. Well, of course, this beetle is a brilliant white without having to mine for minerals. So what if we could mimic that structure and get that same whiteness? These scientists actually can, and they've created a startup to do it using cellulose, one of the most abundant organic compounds on Earth. It's found in bio-waste, harvest of timber. Cellulose can be found anywhere. It's edible, and these folks have figured out a way to recreate that bright white color. So the practice of biomimicry consists of 3 interconnected elements that are applied together to sustainably solve some of the big sticky problems that we've created as humans. The ethos or ethics of biomimicry is about regeneration, creating systems and products that are well adapted to Earth's ecosystems. In short, we need to fit in with the rest of the biosphere. And Reconnect reminds us that we humans are part of nature. It encourages a deep curiosity about the complex workings of natural systems. We give credit to indigenous communities. This is exactly the way that they have passed on their observations and deep insights about the natural world for generations. And we also see it in scientists today that have been working for years to understand exactly how spider silk is formed or how cells filter pure water. And then the emulate component is about genuinely understanding successful functions and strategies that are found in nature, and then trying to mimic them with our existing materials palette, or creating new materials that more closely match those in nature. So you might ask, what does biomimicry have to offer? Well, first off, it's not old school. It's innovative and forward thinking. It really looks at ways to completely redesign our built environment and systems, rather than continuing with incremental changes and small improvements on our existing designs. It's been shown to increase preparedness and skills for students that are entering a rapidly changing world. It's engaging. Everybody loves nature. It can inspire people to think big, show them new possibilities. It can help people believe they can make a difference, can make a real change in the world. It's interdisciplinary and fosters collaboration among a variety of fields and disciplines. It has a really strong sustainability component. And biomimicry acts as a bridge between biology and design. It's translating biologists' understanding of nature into design applications, and that can give us a new perspective for what's even possible. So our goal at the Biomimicry Institute is to bring biomimicry mainstream. We believe that by learning from nature, not just about nature, we can undo much of the damage that we've caused and return to a world that's better for all species, not just for humans. And to accomplish this, we have 3 programmatic pillars. The first is access. We believe that clear and compelling science communication is critical to biomimicry, in fact, critical to so many things these days. So we create content and run the website asknature.org. And then our practice pillar. Our education programs are designed for informal and project-based learning, and we're also introducing biomimicry curricula into formal education settings. And finally, our change pillar. We support new technologies and entrepreneurs with our Ray of Hope Prize and our Launchpad programs. So I'll give you just a little taste of all of those 3 pillars. First off, with Ask Nature and our access pillar. Ask Nature is our newly redesigned online search engine and database. It's a website that strives to make it possible for anyone to learn from nature and ask how design problems have already been solved. The site contains over 1,700 biological strategy profiles. It's got examples of real biomimicry innovations out in the world, and it provides some tools for teachers and students to learn about and begin practicing biomimicry. I'll just walk you through a little bit here. You can use the search function to find information relevant to your design question, or just to learn more about specific organisms. You can search the entire site or search just within the biological strategies section, as you can see here. Point my cursor at it. So I'd like to take you through an example. So I'm an avid gardener, and I'm really interested in learning how to protect the plants in my garden. So since I want to learn more about the function protect from harm, I come down here on the left side and I see protect from physical harm. And then I see, oh, okay, maybe I'll take a look at protect from living threats. And then when I open that field, I see, oh, protect from fungi. And I realize that one of my big challenges in my garden is rot. So I click on that, and this is the page that shows up. And immediately my eyes drawn to that chemicals in oregano act as a fungicide article. I think, oh, this is what I want to learn some more about. So I click on that and I get this article. I see there's a huge amount of information. I see that I can also learn about the specific functions that are performed, as you see here on my cursor, and also more from this living system. I can click on those two links and new menus will open. And beautifully written articles, where we have a team of science writers that are writing these, and new photos, very compelling imagery. We're real proud of this website. You can find it at asknature.org. So I'd like to show you now about how this works. The company Nanomic Biotechnology is bringing this natural protective strategy to life. And we've, again, created a short video to share that with you.
Right until you sink your teeth into them, fresh fruit and vegetables are at risk from fungal infection. And this is a big nuisance to fruit producers who lose around 25% of fruit to fungi spoilage each year. That's even after the use of synthetic fungicides, which are the go-to solution for this problem. But the use of these chemicals is problematic. They have negative effects on both the health of humans and the environment, adversely impact honeybee pollination, and are easily washed away from plants. And because many have a single mode of action, fungi can mutate and develop resistance to them over time. But many plants have evolved their own natural defenses. For example, plants like oregano produce compounds which have antifungal properties. These can be extracted easily and used as natural fungicides. However, their use is limited because they break down quickly within the environment. To overcome this, the company Nanomic has collected a range of these compounds and encapsulated them in tiny biological containers. This protects the compounds from being broken down and helps them to attach to plants. If the fruits are attacked by fungi, the pH of the plant's surface becomes more acidic, and this causes the capsules to break open and release their contents, which quickly kills the fungi. The best bit is that Nanomic's plant-powered products have been demonstrated to be more effective than synthetic fungicides. And because they're derived from plants, they're safe for humans and the environment, keeping your fruit fresh and tasty for longer.
So next I'll dive into our practice pillar, our education and design challenges programs. So this year, we're beginning development on some elementary biomimicry lessons that will introduce biomimicry, this design methodology, this way of thinking to a whole new generation of students. We think that the ability to experience those three components of biomimicry in the classroom is going to be really important, and we'll be doing that this year in 2021. So we also run a youth design challenge. And since 2018, we've had more than 20,000 students engaged in that program, those activities, and from 22 different countries. And I'll just share one quick example with you of a high school team that participated in last year's Youth Design Challenge, the 2020. They wanted to solve for extreme changes in weather and also provide a solution for natural cooling. So in their research about how nature cools surfaces, they learned that Texas horned lizards actually use capillary action to move water from anywhere on its skin to its mouth, and that provides it with drinking water and also with natural cooling. And so from that inspiration, they created a concept for a building material that would actually condense water from nighttime air and then collect it on the surface and be an evaporative cooling system for buildings during the daytime. And they termed their building material the moist brick. We also run the Biomimicry Global Design Challenge, and this is geared towards university students and professionals. It gives participants the opportunity to do design, not just study it. So a few details about the 2021 challenge. And also since 2015, 3,500 submissions from 53 different countries. The design challenge is open to teams of 2 to 8 people. And our design brief is aligned with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So I'd like to share a couple of examples of student projects from the Global Design Challenge. Both of these projects were inspired by the same organism and function, but they were addressing 2 really different challenges, and they came up with 2 very different solutions. So first off, Team Floating Coconut from the Netherlands was worried about the 8.8 million tons of plastic that is ending up in our world's oceans each year. And so they approached this problem with the biomimicry design process. They did some research on Ask Nature and also in primary scientific literature. And through that process, they learned that the gill rakers in a manta ray that a manta ray uses when it's feeding actually form a filtration system that is extremely resistant to clogging and can operate at very high flow rates. So they mimicked the form of these gill rakers, and they designed a filter to try and capture all of that plastic, or at least some of that plastic. And this team, inspired by that same manta ray filter feeding mechanism, they're called Team Ricochet from Taiwan. They designed a low energy, high efficiency air filtration system that can be installed in vehicles to reduce harmful particulate matter and air pollution. So you can see that nature inspiration can lead to some very different solutions and potential solutions for big problems. Also, under our practice pillar is a resource for practicing biomimicry. The Biomimicry Toolbox offers instruction and also resources for how to actually do biomimicry. And if you want to check this out, you can learn more at toolbox.biomimicry.org. And finally, I'd like to talk to you about our change pillar. So this is our innovation and entrepreneurship programs. So through that lens, what do we know about biomimicry? Well, we know that it can lessen or eliminate extractive industries, as we saw with the titanium dioxide example. We know that biomimicry can regenerate degraded ecosystems. We know that biomimicry is not industry specific. It can be applied across a broad range of sectors. We see startups in a number of different fields. We also know that it can lead to platform technologies. And finally, we also know that biomimicry is a $1 trillion market opportunity as identified by Bloomberg and other business sources. So a little bit about how biomimicry is not industry specific. Maybe you've seen news articles about some advancements that are called biomimicry, and they are in the pharmaceutical or medtech industries, or maybe in robotics, or in the military, drones, for example, that are used as weapons, that maybe they mimic the flight pattern of a dragonfly or something. So I just want to reiterate here that the sustainability ethos is at the heart of biomimicry. So innovations that are harmful or damaging to the environment, even though they might mimic something in nature, they don't fall within our definition of biomimicry. However, we see growing trends in areas such as advanced materials, like the paint that I mentioned earlier, ecosystem services, like a company that I'm going to talk about in just a minute, in the fashion and textile industry, in sanitation, and also in agriculture, like the Nanomic biotechnology solution that I just shared. So all of these trends, all of these areas have potential for big sustainability wins and also for huge positive impacts socially, environmentally. Biomimicry can lead to platform technologies. So these are essentially a group of technologies that can be used as a base on which other applications, technologies, or processes are developed. So one example of a platform technology that's inspired by nature is here. Meet the beautiful mantis shrimp. So this marine crustacean actually crushes its prey with a punch that's faster than a .22 caliber bullet. It can do this repeatedly without sustaining damage to the appendage that's doing the punching. How's that happen? Well, the secret is in how its shell is constructed. The layers of chitin, the material that makes up the shell, are actually laid down in a helical pattern. So one layer on top of another. And the company Helicoid Industries is following that blueprint to make composite materials that use far less resources than what our current composites do. They're optimizing that design. So these new materials could be used to make longer wind turbine blades, for example, that might produce more energy from the same amount of wind. Maybe lighter weight airplanes that would use significantly less fuel. So this example, and we have several others of platform technologies that are emerging from bio-inspired and biomimetic disciplines. I want to show you a few more innovative business case studies to show you how biomimicry is being put into practice. So a couple examples of startups and companies that have all been inspired by nature. First off, an example of coastal construction. So more than 70% of coastal and marine infrastructure is made of concrete. And to put coastal protections in place, our current model requires that we destroy these natural environments. So I'll pose a question for you. What do you think nature would do? Just share some ideas in the chat. How might nature protect a coastline? What organisms maybe might do this? Plants, animals? Yeah, just any ideas that you have, throw them in the chat there. I'd be curious to see your thoughts. Well, I'll tell you that the company eConcrete, based in Tel Aviv, has developed a high performance, environmentally sensitive concrete products for these marine infrastructure projects. There are three unique aspects to their design. They've got a proprietary admix that makes the concrete actually life-friendly. They use surface textures that mimic natural features, and so they enhance recruitment of organisms, biological recruitment of mussels, clams, oysters, other organisms that attach to the surface. And they use science-based macro designs that also provide some desirable biological needs, mimicking a tide pool, for example, or a coral reef. And then in the sanitation sector, we know that over 50% of the world's population does not have access to safe sanitation facilities, and 2 billion people still don't have basic sanitation facilities such as toilets or latrines. So in comes startup Changewater Labs. Instead of using filtration to remove waste from a water supply like we currently do, their product actually removes water from waste. So human waste is about 95% water, and they have created a biodegradable, breathable membrane bag that mimics the process of how plants pull moisture from the soil, releasing it as pure water vapor through pores in their leaves. Their bag, the pure water evaporates from the bag. So imagine it's like a porta potty without all the liquid and with no smell because the waste is dehydrated. They're piloting this product that they call the iThrone currently in Uganda. And another industry, fashion and textiles, one of the largest contributors to climate change and a leading cause of water pollution. 60% of textiles are made using fossil fuel-based synthetic fibers. And 20% of wastewater currently comes from textile treatment and dyeing. Rivers change color based on the color of the season in places where textiles are dyed. But the startup Wearwool is taking on this challenge by creating high performance textiles that can naturally decompose with no need for chemical dyes or colorants. So what they do is they go out into nature and they're searching for proteins that contain a desirable trait, or impart a desirable trait, such as color or stretch. And using proprietary biotechnology, they grow cultures that contain this protein, they ferment it, and then they spin it into fibers. The first fibers they've created were grown with red fluorescent proteins that were originally found in Discosoma corals, this beautiful organism you see down here on the lower left. So these are just a few examples of startups that are learning from nature to create products, services, and businesses that are all having a positive impact on the planet. So I'd like to leave you with just a few thoughts about what biomimicry can teach us. We've found that once you start learning about plants, animals, and all of the interconnections that are found in ecosystems in the natural world, you start to understand really how abundant and how varied life is on this planet. We also think of the process of evolution as iterative prototyping. So nature has been prototyping for 3.8 billion years. The life that exists today is the product of millions of failures, then adaptations, and then ultimately successes. And that is something that we can mimic in our own designs. And biomimicry teaches us to value nature for what we can learn, not always what we can extract from it or get from it. We learn about ourselves. We're reminded that we're part of nature and we're not separate from it. What we do impacts the entire planet. So I want to just say thank you so much for your time today, for your interest in biomimicry and sustainability. Again, happy Earth Day, and I really look forward to chatting with you here.
Thank you. So if we can get Michelle and Julia, there you are, back. And if anyone has any questions, please continue to put them in the Q&A box, and I'll turn it over to Julia to take us away, ask some questions.
Hi, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Julia Miller. I am a senior environmental science student at NMSU, president of the Compost Club, and I really enjoyed your biomimicry talk. I thought it was very inspiring, and if anybody has any questions, to please ask them in our Q&A. So my first question is, how do we get biomimicry technology to businesses so that they can actually develop these products?
Thanks so much, Julia. And if I might just take a quick minute to say thanks to everyone, and apologies that the talk was recorded in advance. As Allison mentioned, I've had roofers at my house today, and they're mercifully taking a short break right now, so we don't have to listen to them. But yeah, so Allison wants to answer this question live, or shall I answer it?
No, that's you.
Okay, got it. Sorry. Yeah, no, this is a great question, Susan. The biomimicry technology, so getting biomimicry itself is not a technology, it's a design methodology. It's sort of a way of thinking. And so the way we kind of try to introduce this to businesses is by teaching. We run an incubator program, and through our design challenge, we try to introduce the concept into university settings. We have industrial design professors, engineering professors, physics and biomechanics and biological sciences professors that teach it. And then we try to give folks that have an entrepreneurial mindset some tools that they can use to actually turn their design ideas into something real. With our Ray of Hope Prize program, we actually go out and scout startups that are already using biomimicry or bio-inspired design. And then we support them and we tell their stories. And they will ultimately compete for a $100,000 prize. But essentially, we just work to spread this way of thinking and help support those people who are already doing creating bio-inspired products and following that sustainability mindset.
What specific universities do you work with?
Yeah, Julia, we are, so we have a whole range of universities that participate in our Global Design Challenge. We don't have partnerships with any one university, but we've had submissions from, we've got some champions at the University of Calgary, Utrecht University. The team that I showed you earlier, Floating CocoNet, came from The Hague University. They tend to do a lot of this work. There are a number of universities in Taiwan that we work with that are also introducing biomimicry to engineering and design students. Cal State Long Beach, UC San Diego, Cornell, Columbia, Pratt Design. So quite a few different universities. And it's interesting that it's different disciplines. It's not always, just the sustainability minded. It's design, engineering, sometimes life sciences.
Okay. What would you say your most successful startup has been?
I would say the winner of last year's Ray of Hope Prize, that startup eConcrete that I mentioned in the talk, they have recently been named Bloomberg NEF. I forget what the designation is, but they've recently been featured in Bloomberg and Forbes. They are doing a big infrastructure project at the Port of San Diego right now. So they've recently secured some multi-million-dollar infrastructure contracts. So and they were last year's winner, Ray of Hope Prize winner.
Yeah, I thought that one was really interesting as well. Have there been any biomimicry products that have had any negative implications after actually being put out into the industry?
Yes, I'm sure there are examples. I can't think of a specific one off the top of my head. I do know that one aspect of biomimicry has been a lot of mimicking flight patterns or the sort of skeletal structure of different animals or the musculature to create different military products. And that might not necessarily fit in with where we see biomimicry's niche, that sustainability, working to kind of regenerate some of our degraded ecosystems. And but I can't think of a very specific single product that I'll call out here.
Thank you. And my next question comes from the chat, and it's from Mickey. He says, can biomimicry teach me how to read weeds so that I can select more preferable plants that fill the same role within the ecosystem?
That's an interesting question, Mickey. I think Not exactly. I think close observation of the type of habitat that those weedy plants are in, and maybe I actually think a botanist or a horticulturist or maybe an agronomist might provide better help there. I think what biomimicry can offer in this instance is just the idea that that you learn about nature by deep observation. And so, yeah, maybe observing how that weed grows, what habitat it's in, and then learning about other plants that maybe were native in that environment previously.
And um, is it more common to start with a problem or challenge to solve than to seek out biomimicry strategies, or instead to find a new biological strategy and look for a challenge to apply it to? This question comes from Rush Wayne.
Rush, that is a great question. So there are two design pathways within biomimicry, and we actually call the first one that you've identified the challenge to design pathway. And the second one you've noted there is the biology to design. So it really depends. It depends on the background of the person. So we see two different things. Among design students or designers and engineers, we typically see that starting with a problem or a challenge, because that's what they're familiar with. And then they become curious about maybe how nature has solved it, and they start looking for examples in nature. Like, how is it that a tree with no pumps can actually lift water 100+ feet into the air? How does it achieve that function? We also see examples of research labs, and there are more and more of them all the time at different universities that really have a deep understanding of natural systems or processes, cellular processes, molecular processes, where they are learning about that biological strategy. And then they suddenly have an aha moment where they think of a challenge that might solve. There are some of the startups that we're working with right now in our current cohort of Ray of Hope Prize startups that are like that. So it can happen either way. It sort of depends on what your background is. And yeah, I think it depends on what your background is.
Is Ray of Hope the predominant fund that starts these startups?
It's our program, and we run this program in partnership with the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. Ray Anderson was a pioneer of sustainable business back in the 90s. He was a carpet manufacturer, and he converted what was a very polluting business into what's now a model of a sustainable business. His company was called Interface. It's a carpet company. But we founded this prize, and I would say at the moment, it's the premier prize for bio-inspired startups. But it's still a fairly small program, if I'm honest. So we just are out. Yeah, we scout for sustainable startups and then try to support their work.
And the last question from this chat is, how do you know which aspect of nature suits your problem best?
Bert, that's a great question. The main thing you think about is when you think, as with any design process, you start by identifying your problem clearly, define your problem, identify the context, and really think about the function that you're trying to solve for. So and when you break it down in that way and think about that function, then you can start thinking about what organisms in nature that may have already solved that function. For example, the tree that I just spoke about, you know, if you're trying to figure out how do I elevate, how do I get water to the top of my apartment building? I'm doing construction, and maybe you want to look at trees and how their internal structure facilitates, and the capillary action, and the fact that the stomates and the leaves at the very top of the tree actually pull water up that high rather than pumping from the ground up. So it's really critical to identify the function that you're trying to solve for, and then the context. And that's true of all design processes. And then observation of nature, kind of just learning about how different organisms, where they live, what they do, how they do it, I think can be really helpful.
And how do you address the economic viability of some of these solutions when you compare them to the alternatives that might be much cheaper and worse for the environment?
Julia, that's the question. That's the $1 million question right now. So at the moment, one of the barriers to these startups is just the ability to scale, the ability to produce their products or deliver their services in a cost-effective way. And so some of the startup training that we do and the support that we offer is really aimed at that very thing. So all of these companies, none of them will succeed if they don't achieve that economic viability. So that's, we try to make introductions to investors or corporate partners. I will say that the sustainability movement is growing and rapidly, and there is a very quickly, I'm not going to say that, I'm not saying this very eloquently, the interest in supporting sustainable or regenerative businesses is growing quite quickly among investors. So being able to get these technologies, these founders in contact with the capital to support them is really critical.
I think that's all of the questions that we have for you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all of our attendees, and Michelle and Julia. And congratulations, Julia is about to graduate in a couple weeks here. So yay to her. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Michelle. And thanks also to the SPOC executive team, the Vice Chancellor, Dean Reddy, Dean Flores, Frank for taking care of us with the tech support, and everyone. So thank you very much. And please join us again with the same Zoom link at 2:30. And we'll come back with a series of a couple different quick talks from faculty members at NMSU on carbon sequestration, food waste, water, heat island effect. If any of those things sound cool, which they should because they're super cool, please come back in 30 minutes. And any other closing remarks, Michelle?
Just say thank you to everyone. I appreciate you listening in, and thanks so much for the great work all of you are doing. Happy Earth Day.
Thank you. Happy Earth Day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye all.